Hello and welcome to this edition of The Coach Says. Hi, I'm George Hartman, or as some people like to call me, that practice management guy. And, I'm okay with that. And if you're joining us for the first time, this is where I get to pick what I think are some of the best time-tested of the 150 plus Coaches Forum columns that I've written over the past 15 years for the industry trade journal Investment Executive and present them to you in this video format. The structure is that I respond to a specific question I have received from an advisor who wrote into my column. And so far in this series, we've talked about a variety of topics that my work as a coach to hundreds of advisors around the world tells me are of significant interest in the ever-changing and ever-challenging environment of today's financial advisory industry. So this is a no-cost, no-obligation opportunity to learn some of the strategies and tactics that are being used by top-performing advisors with whom I've worked over the past 30 plus years. So let's get into today's letter from an advisor whose name happens to be Alan and see what the coach says. And Alan's subject line on his email was, "Wanted to buy." I like that. And he writes, "I heard you speak recently at our Advisor Professional Development Day on the topic of buying and selling a practice. And after asking myself some of the questions you suggested, I am now convinced that I want to grow my practice by acquiring retiring advisors' books of business. I agree with your comments about the risks involved, but I still see this as the best way to gather assets quickly and substantially increase my revenue." So I have two questions. Number one, where do I find practices for sale? And number two, how do I approach prospective buyers? And the coach says, well, first off, Alan, congrats on being thoughtful about both the opportunities and the challenges of buying a book of business. There can be a lot of work associated with an acquisition, and finding the right practice to buy is much easier said than done. However, as I stated at your meeting, if you are able to find a great practice or book of business, and you can put together a good deal, it will definitely help you grow your business faster than most longer-term marketing and prospecting efforts. Unfortunately, as you probably guessed, you're not the only advisor who believes that buying could be better than building. And as a result, we are currently in what is described as a seller's market, where there are significantly more advisors wanting to buy practices or books of business than there are advisors ready to sell. And based on the number of inquiries I receive every month from advisors, I would estimate the ratio of buyers to sellers is at least 50 to 1. So if you want to be a successful buyer in such a strong seller's market, you must find a way to stand out among all the other advisors who might want to bid when a good quality practice comes up for sale. And like the hot real estate market that we've all been experiencing in various parts of the country the past few years, the average length of time a practice is on the market is likely to be measured in weeks rather than months. And that means you won't be able to wait until you hear of a practice becoming available to start making yourself known to the seller. You have to position yourself as the buyer of choice well in advance of any seller announcing their business is for sale. And to do that, I believe you must approach seeking a practice or book of business to buy like you would any other major marketing campaign. And that's with a formal, well-defined marketing strategy accompanied by various promotional tactics to put yourself top of mind on that morning when those retiring advisors wake up deciding that it's time to sell their businesses. And let me add a couple of other observations from my experience that might give you some perspective. And the first is that very few advisors circle a date on a calendar and at 5 o'clock on that particular Friday afternoon, hand in their keys and walk out the door. It just doesn't happen that way. Unless they are forced by circumstances, most advisors exit their business over an extended period of time that typically ranges over months or even years. So this is not a quick project. This is one that not only requires careful planning, but it quite possibly requires long-term execution. The second point I would like to make is that most advisors simply don't have a formal succession or exit plan. And so they may make an abrupt decision to start the process, but it is likely to be extended, as I already said. Now, the funny thing is, when I ask advisors why they don't have an exit plan, the number one reason they give me is that they cannot find a qualified successor. Now, isn't that a paradox? So many advisors wanting to buy, but so many advisors who want to sell are saying they can't find the right candidate. What that tells me is that advisors wanting so desperately to buy have not done a very good job of positioning themselves as qualified candidates. So there's your opportunity to promote yourself to potential sellers through a series of ongoing marketing activities that place your name foremost in their minds before the day arrives that they reach the final decision to implement their exit plan. In my view, then, you need an acquisition marketing plan, specifically directed at aging advisors whom you suspect might be open to early conversations about your potential as their successor. And I believe you might find it less challenging, actually, to put together an effective acquisition marketing plan than a typical client marketing plan, because you will be targeting a narrow group of individually identifiable people in a market that you know well because you're part of it, with a strong, singular theme and a compelling message. And here's my important point number 3. Your message has to be about 2 things. Number 1, your reputation, and number 2, the unique benefits that you will bring to the retiring advisor. And that's because advisors exiting their business want to feel that they've received fair benefit for their years of building their business, but they also want to leave a legacy of which they are proud. And that means they want to feel that whatever you have to offer, beyond money, by the way, is valuable, and that they're leaving their clients in good hands. So your reputation will be of paramount importance to them, because they know that their reputation will be colored by yours if they endorse you as their successor. So here are some suggestions for creating an acquisition marketing plan. And note how they are similar to those you would use to create an effective client marketing plan. Begin by defining your target market. In other words, describing the type of practice that you're looking for. You can do that demographically, you can do that geographically, by number of clients, by revenue, by asset level, product mix, and other kind of quantifiable characteristics. But don't forget the qualitative criteria as well, such as planning and investment philosophy and client service model and things like that. Okay, with your target market well defined, then, figure out the marketing message that's going to be most effective. The benefits highlighted in your acquisition marketing message must reflect, as I said, the point of view of an advisor looking to sell his or her business. So put yourself in their shoes and ask, well, if it was me, what would I want to see or hear from a candidate for my successor to make me look favorably on them compared to all those other advisors out there I know who would just jump at the chance to take over my business? Okay, so now we know who we're directing our message to and what it's going to be. Then implement through a public relations plan. And that means utilizing a number of tactics to build your credibility and your reputation. So do things like publish articles or white papers, get yourself quoted in industry trade publications or consumer media. You know, I work with a lot of editors, and many of them have a lot of space to fill every month. And they're always looking for new ideas and fresh perspectives from people who know, from experts. And you know a lot about your profession and client behavior and all of that type of thing. You could become one of their sources. If it's possible, write a book, even a short, simple one. You know, self-publishing has never been easier. And I can tell you from personal experience that publishing a book gives you instant credibility. If you don't feel up to it, hire a ghostwriter. There are lots of freelance writers who will take your thoughts and turn them into a short book. Okay, step number 4 is to develop a strong online presence. Now, I'm hoping that you already have a robust website Because quite frankly, in the minds of many, if you don't have a strong online presence, you simply don't exist. But why not create a section of your website that's devoted specifically to your interest in acquiring other practices? And so include information about the type of book you're looking for, your target market, in other words, your philosophy as to how the business should run and how clients will be transitioned, and any other of those benefits to the seller that would come from choosing you. Okay, tactic number 5 then is to demonstrate leadership. Position yourself as someone who gets things done. All right, if I'm appointing you as my successor, I don't want you to be a follower. I don't want you to just maintain the business. I want you to lead it to greater heights. And so taking a leadership position to demonstrate that you, in fact, are a leader will be incredibly valuable to you. So try, for example, getting a leadership position within industry trade associations or in your own community, someplace where you can demonstrate the personal values that underpin your reputation. Okay, now, on to your second question. Where do you look for books of business for sale? It's not like advisors put a for sale sign on their office door, is it? That obviously wouldn't sit too well with clients. So how do you identify prospective sellers? The first place to look is within your own dealer firm. Tell as many people as possible, fellow advisors, management, staff, tell everyone that you are looking to buy a practice or book of business. It's to everyone's benefit, your clients, your firm, and you, if clients are transitioned to another advisor within the same dealer firm. So make this one of your priorities. And having said that, however, don't ignore your competitors. Who do you admire and respect among competing advisors in your community? Recall what I said earlier about many advisors saying they can't find a qualified successor? Well, if there's no suitable candidate within their own firm, some of your competitors might well be open to a conversation with you about taking over their business. And in that instance, I would say, probably a direct approach, just to, buy a coffee and explore it with them. Opportunity number 3, talk to wholesalers and other industry vendors, people that come into your office all the time. They typically know hundreds of advisors and are often part of confidential conversations with advisors who might be contemplating their retirement. So they may be aware of advisors' plans to exit the business before they become public. Opportunity number 4, take advantage of your network. Local business organizations, your chamber of commerce, business networking groups, and so on. Someone that will give you access to other community leaders who may know potential sellers as well. Opportunity number 5, beyond your network, use your centers of influence. Now, just as you look to accountants and lawyers for client referrals, they may also be sources of acquisition referrals. They may, for example, be providing professional services to other advisors, or maybe even have another advisor for themselves to whom they've stopped giving referrals because that advisor is getting older and has no succession plan. And no one wants to give referrals to an advisor with an uncertain future. I would also encourage you to join and become active in industry trade associations. Now, I suggested earlier that taking a leadership role in an industry trades organization would be a good public relations builder because it does put you out front and center. But even if you're not willing or perhaps able to take on a leadership role, be active in the association anyway. Go to the meetings, even if you're not inspired to do so because you're not interested in the agenda or you've heard the speaker before. Take advantage of association meetings and conferences by making a point to talk to as many of your peers as possible. Introduce your acquisition intentions or ambitions into conversations where you think it's appropriate. Another opportunity is to rely on, or look at least, at business brokerage listings. There are now a number of companies that offer matchmaking services between buyers and sellers with specialty in the financial advisory community. Most work online, so you can do some research, check them out, and they will often ask you to create an online profile that describes you and what you are looking for so that they can apply their matchmaking technology. Further opportunity, and probably the biggest one that is overlooked far too often, and that is within continuity agreements. Now, you probably have a continuity agreement, in that type of reciprocal arrangement. You and another advisor agree to help each other continue doing business if one of you becomes unable to run your practice. In addition to that continuity aspect, I would suggest you include a clause in your agreement that gives you first rights to purchase the other practice if one of you dies, becomes permanently disabled, or simply wants to retire. Now, I know an advisor who has made continuity agreements a major part of his acquisition strategy and now has 4 or 5 first right to buy options as part of any business continuity agreement to which he has agreed. So the bottom line is this: you will have more likelihood of success if you've built a brand that cuts through the noise of the competition and you have an active search program underway. When a practice then comes up for grabs, you'll have a jump start on potentially competing buyers who'll still be kind of running around trying to introduce themselves and establish themselves as contenders to purchase that practice. So, Alan, my very best wishes to you for success in your search for a quality practice or book of business. As mentioned, this column previously appeared in Investment Executive. You can subscribe to the print or digital edition or read my columns online simply by going to investmentexecutive.com. And thanks for joining us today for this edition of The Coach Says. I very much welcome your feedback, or if you have a question you would like answered, just hit reply on this email and let me know what it is. I will respond either directly or perhaps through one of these video columns. And watch for upcoming editions of The Coach Says. And as I always say, may your practice be as successful as you want it to be.